welcome to the Blue Collar Wealth Club podcast. I am one of your hosts, Sheena White.
And I'm your other host, Jerry Garcia.
So today I want to talk about one of my favorite chapters in the book Great by Choice, which by Jim Collins, which I talk about this book all the time because I love it. And that is a chapter called Fire Bullets, Then Cannonballs. So way back in the day when they had, you had big ships were fighting each other with cannonballs.
And
Long time ago, back in the pirates time. Like imagine you are in a fight and it's foggy all around and you can't see anything, right? But you're on a ship, so you can't get more cannonballs, just delivered to you. You have very, very limited resources. And so what they would do is they would shoot bullets because they had more bullets than cannonballs, right? So they would shoot bullets until they found their target through the mist, and then they would shoot the cannonballs. So you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, interesting story, Sheena, but what does this have anything to do with business?
I promise there's a point.
There is a point, and we're going to get to it right now. So the point is that in your business, you inherently have limited resources, right? No one is coming to just give you more. There's no airdrop happening. It's just not, right? We have limited resources. And so if we're going to try new things or we're trying to hit our targets, if we shoot all of our cannonballs and we use a ton of resources before we know if it's going to hit, we're going to end up using up all our resources. And then when we find it, we're not going to have enough cannonballs to, basically destroy. So we need to shoot bullets or test things with small amounts of resources so that we know we can hit the target before we invest large amounts of resources.
Right. Pretty simple. I mean, you talk about maybe you just did a big job. You got this huge payday and you're like, sweet, we got this 100K sitting here. Let's throw 100K at Google Ads this month so that we can just go. And then come to find out that your ads weren't very good and that 100K maybe netted you, 20 back.
20. Okay, he was being nicer.
60.
He was, yeah, I was being nicer than him. But, well, yeah, exactly. So then you just use up your cannonballs.
Right. And now you don't have another 100K to load. You can reload that 20 and then put it back in and hope you made it the right tweaks to your ads so that now you can get 25 out of it or something along those lines. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the basic concept behind it. And, we can kind of go more into the application and where it's relevant, but that's the overarching idea behind this.
Yeah. One, with your same example, you would take, say, instead of putting 100K towards the Google ads, you would say, okay, I have 100K, I'm going to take 25K and I'm going to test out new marketing. So I'm going to take maybe 5K and test out 5 channels and see which one gets me the most return. Because then if you have 5K in Google ads and say that 5K got you a 10, you hit it real hard and you got a 10x return, boom, you got 50K. Now we can invest that back in and see what happens versus, say something else. Maybe you decide to do some sort of print advertising, which people argue with me all the time that it works. I will argue back that I don't think it does, but whatever. For some people, they are still convinced. So, maybe throw it into that and see if you get anything out. So you can test and you can throw these bullets at different ideas and see which one you should put your cannonballs behind.
Absolutely. And this is just, it's pretty simple. You just got to test things out. Don't ever kind of put all your eggs in one basket, right? Just another way of saying the same thing. You want to go out and test these strategies. If you're testing a new market or a new service, throw a little bit of resources at it. Don't try to just, overblow all of your advertising into this one new service that you offer, and then now you have to pivot your entire business because all of your calls coming in are for this one new service that you offer that really is just an add-on to the services you already do. You may go to your current clients and say instead, hey, we also do this. Say you're doing gutters and say, hey, we can power wash the house or the windows for you. If that's a service you've wanted to add on, instead of advertising that as its own business, take it on with your current clients, test it out, see if it makes sense, and rent that equipment for a while when those jobs do come up so that you can test it out, make sure that it makes sense. You may find out that there's not really that high a desire for it from the clientele that you're already serving. And then so instead of creating this whole side business, really, when you were trying to just add on to your current business, you can find out that that didn't work, and you didn't spend a lot of time or money or resources on figuring out that that's not the strategy.
Yeah, and then you can say, okay, then you're not stuck in it. So like, for instance, I have a client that they were doing expanding to other locations, and the first expansion they did, they went out and they bought a office suite. And it has not gone so well. It's been a different market than they were really anticipating. Like everything that they tried in that market was the same as their previous market. It just hasn't really worked the way they wanted it to. And so now they have this office space that they own. So it's not like a lease or anything like that. They can't just like abandon it or, pay a lease breakage fee. They own it. They have a mortgage. So they're pretty like locked in. So now we're going to do a lot of bullets to try and figure out how to actually make that cash flow. But then when he decided to go into a whole different market and expand a different way, he got an office. He just got one of the like a shared workspace. He's like, okay, I learned something. Let's try it first and let's make it work before we invest in an actual office space. And so this is a great example of bullets before cannonballs, because he did the cannonball and it's been a very expensive cannonball. And now on a different location, he's done the bullets before the cannonballs. And so that one's working out a lot better. And it's a lot less of an ask to make it cash flow and make it profitable, because the investment is so much lower as well.
I think restaurants do that a lot, right? You get one good location and you're like, sweet, everyone loves this food. And so you decide to put up a second location in a different suburb, and maybe that suburb just doesn't, really like that kind of food, or there's just not the type of thing, or there's already a super popular restaurant in that same, kind of food, whether it's Mexican food or Indian food or whatever. And yeah, and so now they're in a market, in a lease, in a building, when they could have maybe tested out that market, see what else is out there, maybe get a smaller space to start and just try to grow into that market, rather than, like you said, they take over this giant space into this giant restaurant that closed down for whatever reason, and you realize that, oh man, this is not going as I thought, and now I'm stuck in this lease. And at least in this case, in my scenario, they don't own the building, so they they have some options of breaking a lease or whatever the case. And that's really what we're talking about, is testing that market, testing that service, little tests at a time. Don't crank things up to volume 10, when you're trying something new. Brand new song, put your headphones on, crank it full. No, let's start at 1, crank it up to 2, see if we like it, see if it's not going to give us a headache.
I mean, if it's my children's music, but I know I don't like it because it's terrible. What is this stuff that they call music they listen to these days? I'm so old. Anyways, yeah, but I mean, and I actually had a client who did that same thing they had a lease, but it was a much larger space. It was in a totally different demographic. The rent was huge, and they just couldn't make it work. So that's the other thing, really, if you're looking at expansion, is what is going to cash flow. Then one nice thing about the example I was giving before is, yeah, we own the building. That's not ideal, but at the same token, it's pretty inexpensive. There is a market there. We just have to figure out a marketing strategy that actually talks to that market, because it's obviously different. And so that's a much smaller hurdle, but how much nicer would it be if we had, no loan payment to overcome everything,
right,
versus just being kind of stuck. And, looking at your options when you're expanding, you first have to know who your ideal client is. And we've talked about this before, right? Who do you want to serve? Because they don't live everywhere.
Well, that's exactly where I was going to go next.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah, so you really have to analyze, where do these people live? So for instance, if you want a very affluent demographic, one of the places you can look at is, where are Whole Foods markets? Because bigger companies spend a ton of money on market research before they ever open a location, because they know their demographic and they want to make sure that they are near their demographic.
Well, yeah, utilize the research of those larger companies.
Yeah.
You could even do this in online marketing. With Facebook marketing, one of the things we would do is, if you want somebody who's, a homeowner, and they took away that ability for you to target homeowners, for various reasons. But there's still ways to do it. What do homeowners like? Homeowners like places like Home Depot. They like places like furniture stores, and so you can say, hey, these people like this and they like that. And so
do it yourself home improvement.
You start to, what else do they like? What else do these types of clients like? Where do they shop? What do they watch? What do they read? And find those same types of people, and then you can kind of try and back your way into the right place.
Yeah, it's like, and looking at what are the types of stores, what are the types of things that your ideal client is going to be around, and looking, okay, where are these located? Maybe I want to be adjacent to it, right? Versus, sometimes a lot of people will just look for like the cheapest, which is fine if you're going to the client, but isn't really that great if the client has to come to you. Because if the client's coming to you, you have to think about it from the client's perspective. What do they see? Like for instance, I had a restaurant client, and they were going to open this new location, and I went there, and I knew I had the address, and it was very difficult for me to find. I was purposely going there because I had to go there for a meeting, and I was like, dude, how did you find this? Oh, this thing that I'm like, please tell me you did not already sign the dotted line. This is ridiculous. It has no view from the main road. The signage is small. It's tucked into a corner. It's super hard to find. You're going to have so much more work trying to get people to come here because they don't know it exists.
Reminds me of, the venue my daughter played a show at.
Oh my gosh.
Creepy
one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and hard to find is not good for clients.
Okay, yeah, I said it was the creepy one, so now you have to tell the story of this venue.
Yeah, this venue, I don't know, it looked like an old abandoned school.
It
and
totally did. It was like a dead bird. It was so gross.
Very, very strange. Anyway, she was playing a rock show there, so I guess the inside, spectacular. Great sound sets, great stage, great system. They had a bar in the center. Like the whole thing was really cool. From the outside, it looks like you look like you're in the wrong place. It looks like it's industrial.
There was no signage.
Yeah, it looks like an abandoned school, and the entrance that we tried to go into was not open, and there wasn't very clear where the entrance was. And all these things are important, obviously, when you're trying to
Good thing it was during the day.
use a business. Yeah, no joke.
We're gonna die. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the start of every bad slasher film. I was like, there's even a dead bird. It's ominous, but it was fine. Everything was fine.
Like I said, great location.
Not.
Once again, bullets.
Yes, right? Yeah, think about these things, right? From a customer perspective. So many times when we're in it, we understand. So actually, I was at a thing with my kids the other day. I was able to get them tickets to see their favorite author. Her name's Raina Telgemeier. She writes these children's graphic novels. But she was talking about her process and the editing process. And somebody asked her, does the editing process, does it offend you? Like, does it make you feel bad about yourself? Because somebody's basically coming in with a big red pencil and saying, it sucks. And it was interesting what she said. And she said that yes, it was rough and it was hurtful, but she had to look at it from the fact that the editor is basically the client, basically the reader,
right?
And is fulfilling that role. And so when the editor is coming and saying, hey, this doesn't make sense, or this needs to change, or I don't get it, that's the reader saying, I don't get it. So she was saying that actually makes her better. And yes, it's a difficult process in the sense that it hurts her feelings at first, but that it's the best part of the process because it makes her better, and it makes her books better, and it makes them more, clear and enjoyable to the reader. And I thought that was a really good way of thinking about it. It's sometimes hard to hear client feedback, but your clients, if they're giving you feedback that's constructive, they're just trying to help. And so really trying to put that client lens on when you're going into new options or new arenas and saying, okay, does my client want this? And then doing that bullet and testing it and seeing before fully getting in there.
Well, yeah, and getting that feedback is important. And that's sometimes why it's so great to grow past your sphere as a client base. Especially this was true in mortgage. They always say, well, go to your sphere. Do you have friends, family, whomever, coworkers who could utilize these services if they need to refi, if they need to buy a house? That's always great. But they're also the least likely to give you constructive feedback. They don't want to hurt feelings. They don't want to, and so growing past that initial sphere of influence for yourself is great because you can get that feedback from these people you've helped or we're going to help. And if you internalize that and take that from their perspective and say, okay, well, how can I change that? How can we change this so that client experience is different? And that's what these tests are all about. Get that feedback. That's why, I don't know if they still do this, but you used to be able to take these surveys. These guys would go in the mall and stop you and just say, hey, we want to take, we're giving these little surveys and it's products doing product testing.
Yeah, they still do those, but now they just call me all the time. Remember they called the other day? I had to answer all these questions. They're like, oh, awesome. Oh, actually, you don't qualify. I'm like, sweet. I'm so glad that I just spent the last 20 minutes answering questions to find out I don't qualify. Anyways, they still do them.
But yeah, I mean, that's product testing, right? That is these large corporations throwing bullets instead of cannonballs. They are testing markets. They're doing research. They're doing all of this stuff. That's why movies or TV shows have these pre-screens where they test the audience reaction and they decide to make adjustments if they need to. I remember the show Lost when it came out. I know the first episode, one of the main plans was to kill off one of the guys who ended up being the main character, and audiences hated it. And so they had to pivot because nobody liked it. Everyone was like, this sucks. I'm not watching this show. They just killed off my favorite character already.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you'll have that with characters that they weren't ever intended to be characters on the show. For instance, The Office, the character Creed. That's his actual name because he didn't even have a name in the show because he wasn't supposed to be a thing. And it just became, a cult favorite, and therefore he's a whole thing.
Right.
Nobody business.
Gustavo Fring on Breaking Bad was supposed to only have a couple episodes, and he ended up being a big integral part of that story, and then being part of the previous the prequel series of Better Call Saul, because
I still want them to do another prequel because we did not get to learn all the things we need to learn about Gustavo Fring. But anyways, that is totally off subject. We could go into TV shows we like. But the point is that you need to do that market testing, and sometimes it will feel slow and painstaking, but it will end up helping you in the long run with your cash flow, with your profitability, with a whole bunch of different areas of your business, because then you're putting the cannonballs and putting the resources behind what you know is going to be successful because you have the proof that this is what your market wants. This is what is out there that your market is saying yes to. So instead of just guessing and utilizing and using up all your resources on guesses, let's guess in a small way so that we can know in a big way.
Well, and that's the other side of it. You have to also be willing to not only shoot bullets, right? You keep testing, well, that worked. Maybe this will work better, and keep firing bullets when you've seen already the data that shows you that this is going to work better than the rest. You have to be then willing to load up those cannonballs and actually fire them. Because if you're shooting bullets at a ship forever, you're never going to sink that thing. Eventually you do have to take that risk and say, all right, this is what the research showed me. And now it's time to load those cannonballs and really go for it.
Yeah. Which can be difficult too. If you're super risk averse, I have a tendency to be super risk averse. But you sometimes you just have to go for it, right? And you have to say, okay, you know what? Win, lose, or draw, I have the data that's telling me this is probably going to be a win. And you just have to have that certainty within yourself that you're going to make it work one way or another.
Yeah, and you're not going to hit it every time, Sometimes you will hit that bullet will fire right there, and that ship moves a little bit, and then you fire the cannonball, and it misses. And you know what? That's fine. You go back to bullets. Go back to bullets, realign, find that target again, fire the next cannonball. Because if you spend all your time just doing the bullets, it's never going to help you get there. You have to take that risk, like you said, and be willing to, bite the bullet, I guess. and make it happen. So there's two sides to it. You can't only fire cannonballs, but you also can't only fire bullets.
Yeah. And I think that it's the wisdom to know the difference and to know when, right? And as the business owner, someone said that the true job of a CEO is resource allocation. So I think the true job of a CEO is deciding, okay, here's where we're firing bullets. Okay, now we're going to fire a cannonball. And that in and of itself is resource allocation and really deciding where we're going to put our resources in order to get to that next level.
Yep. I think that's really all I got on the topic.
Okay, so don't fire the cannonballs first, but don't be afraid to fire it when you have the data behind you that tells you to do it. So this is the Blue Collar Wealth Club, and we will see you next time.